Thank you to Butler Library for having us all. This is my first time here in 30 authors. I don't really consider myself an author, and I'll tell you why in a minute. This is a picture of my dad, and that's who I'll be talking about. Okay. Back 9 years ago, this book is 9 years old. Back 9 years ago, I went and saw the movie Unbroken. All my life, I've listened to stories of what my dad went through being a prisoner of war for 3.5 years. It wasn't until I sat in a movie theater with the big screen and watched some of these devastating things happen that it really broke me up. When I walked out of the movie theater, I said to my husband, I have all this information about my dad, and if I don't do anything about it, it's all going to be gone. So I went to the computer and I started typing and doing everything. I came up with a book called Daddy Came Home. I called it Daddy Came Home because if Daddy didn't come home, I wouldn't be here to talk to you about this. What happened was my dad, he graduated in 1935. We were from a place called Pitcairn, which is near Monroeville. And he went through the normal stuff. He got a job after high school, and then he had to go to war. He and my mom ran away to Winchester, Virginia, so that my dad said he wanted her available when he came home from the war. But what they didn't realize was when my dad flew off to the Philippines, my mom was pregnant. So my dad went on to the Philippines, and he was in the engineering group, and they built bridges and they did things like that until the fateful day, wouldn't you know it, December 7th, here we are. The war broke out. And as it states in my dad's own words, when the war broke out, they got on combat duty and they were there to take care of themselves and to protect themselves. My dad was in the Bataan Death March, which, if any of you don't know what the Bataan Death March was, over in Bataan, which is a peninsula in the Philippines, the Japanese wanted that place really bad because it was an ideal location. So at that time, our guys in the lower part of Bataan were short in medical, short in food, short in all kinds of different things. And if you all heard about General Douglas MacArthur, well, General Douglas MacArthur was there, and he told the guys, I will return. They were in a very, very bad situation, and that's the reason that the Japanese got to take over them, because they were in a poor situation. I'll try to make this short. My dad started the Death March, and it was to go 85 miles. A lot of people died because they didn't have food or water. My dad states in his own words, on the first 5 days, they didn't have food or water, and on the 5th day, they gave them a handful of wormy rice. Now, if you ever see the sequel to Unbalanced, this took me off the deep water too, because in the sequel, they showed a Japanese, the sequel was about the POWs coming back home, and they would have these night dreams and terrible things. In the sequel, on the screen, it showed a Japanese officer handing a POW a handful of wormy rice. I always wondered in my lifetime why I never saw rice at the dinner table. So anyway, my dad went through very difficult times. He did come home. He did. I feel terribly for people who have PSD. Yeah, you know what it is. I'm crazy up here now. Because this is real. This is real. They come up, they have really serious things after being in war. My dad did come back, and in all cases, I think he did lead a normal life. He worked in the post office. He was an ambulance driver. He worked, he was in the minstrel. Does everybody remember what a minstrel was? Mm-hmm. Shh, my dad was in the minstrel. Anyway, And then things went on. My brother was born while my dad was missing in action. And the one thing that my mother did tell me, that when my brother was born, he had yellow jaundice. And my mother said, I looked at your brother and I said, just because your dad's fighting the Japs, you don't have to look like one. So anyway, he did come home. He had a 3.5-year-old. First time he saw my brother was 3.5 years old. And I tell everybody they led a normal life until May 7th, 1949. And that was the most excitement day of their life when I was born. So anyway, to go on, in October 1956, my dad died of a massive coronary. I was 7 years old at the time. I was up at my grandparents', and never underestimate a 7-year-old, because I remember what went on. I'm now 75 years old, and I remember what happened. I remember the time I was at my grandparents' house, and they got a call in the middle of the night, and I went running down the steps, and they shooed me back upstairs. And I was sitting at the top of the steps, listening to what was going on, and I could hear them say, Earl died. Now, my brother's name was Earl, and my dad's name was Earl. So, in the mind of a 7-year-old, I'm thinking, let's see, if I had to choose which one to die, which would I choose? My brother. Well, as it ended up, it wasn't my brother, it was my dad. He was 40 years old at the time. And no one warned me at that time that what a military funeral was like. So I went to the military funeral. I saw the taps, I saw the guns, and even now at my age, when I hear that, it just rips my heart apart big time. So after my dad had died, my mom tried to get services connected. It passed in Pittsburgh, it passed in Harrisburg, it went to DC, and they threw it out. So we lived on Social Security and Social Security and VA benefits my whole life. So I lived in a very poor way. However, I was rich in many ways because I had a lot of love around me. So let's progress here. When my dad did come home, he gave one interview. And in the book, I have his words in italicized. Me writing this book means nothing. But the fact that my dad's words are in here, I'm trying to keep real history alive. That is the reason that I wrote this book. Like I say, did it 9 years ago. I've sold probably 1,400 books. I go out and give presentations to share to people, to let people not forget what happened in our history. Okay, so let's progress. I don't want to keep us here too long. The book's gone well. Just this last month, I was in Evans City, I was in Zelienople, and I was in Greensburg. So here we are 9 years later, and people were wanting me to talk. And I'm very blessed because I want to keep my dad's wishes and what his thoughts are alive. Anyway, so let's fast forward here. Back right before COVID, I got a call from a friend in Eastern Pennsylvania, and he said, Peggy, do you have any of those books? And I said, sure. He said, send me out 10. I didn't know what he was doing. I sent him out 10. His daughter happened to be an actress out there in Hollywood, and she was sending them out. He was sending them out to her. Well, he came back a while later, and he said, Peggy, I gotta tell you, there are 4 directors in Hollywood and 3 in New York that are interested in making your book a movie. I said, really? He said, there's only one problem. They want to make sure that this is the truth. How can you verify that this is the truth? I said, wait a minute, this is my family. I'm not going to lie about my family. They said, people want to have verification that this is the truth. So I went in and I found 3 elderly people in Pitcairn who knew my family. They were in their 90s at the time, and they gave me an interview, and I got that all. And now, since all 3 of them have passed. And then the guy said to me, well, Peggy, there's one more thing that has to go on. I said, what's that? He said, well, they might want to tweak it just a little bit. I said, wait a minute. This is my family. I don't want you tweaking to make things that are not the truth. I said, I'd be happy if somebody's interested, if they write down what they want to change, I would consider it. So anyway, all this happened right before COVID. Then everything went crazy. What's down the road? I have no clue. I have no clue. But a lot of people have enjoyed my book. I sell this for $10, and I'm just very blessed to have this. Now, let me tell you a little story here. I'm still fighting World War II in 2024. Why? Well, a man who was a POW with my dad came to Grove City, which is where I lived, and he brought me a bunch of stuff. And he said to me, I was in my 40s at the time, and he said, Peggy, I got to tell you what happened when they dropped the bomb at Hiroshima. Kobe, Japan, which is where they were POWs at, everybody was in shock, and they made them all come out, and they watched the mushroom cloud come over top of everybody. And this man, his name was Captain Locke at the time, he said, Peggy, when that mushroom cloud came over top of us, we could put our hand down, and we could see through our hand. So he said, how old are you? And at that time, I was in my 40s. He said, I think you better go to Butler VA Hospital and get checked. Well, I said, forget it. If I got something, I got something. That's the way it is. But he said to me, it could skip generations. Now, I have 2 sons and 2 granddaughters. So here I am in 2024, still thinking about World War II. I would like to think it has weakened. If I would happen to carry something, it has weakened, and I pray to the Lord that never ever happens. Anyway, this is my book. I enjoy coming to talk to everybody. Does anybody have any questions at all? Thank you very much.